Hello, everybody, and welcome to July 5th. I hope you had a great holiday weekend. Stephen Meade for Domicile Real Estate, where we're real estate for people who love houses. Wow, I almost got that wrong. It's a little too much vacation yesterday. Anyhow, I wanted to talk before we start and go through the stats about something. We frequently mention that holiday weekends, especially, and holidays tend to sort of mess up our real estate stats. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the reason why that is. And the biggest reason is not just what you think, right? Like it's a day that sort of interrupts things. That would be bad enough. But the biggest problem that we face in it messing up our statistics is that it seems to affect sellers and buyers differently. And when you think about it, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, so we'll use 4th of July as an example because that just happened. Now, it is true that a lot of buyers are distracted for 4th of July. They're taking trips to the river, they're going to the beach. But I would say most buyers are distracted maybe Friday through Monday this weekend. Today, they're not so distracted anymore. And let's be honest, if there was a house they wrote an offer on and they found out that they might get it on Saturday, they probably would take the time to do a counteroffer. But sellers are different. If you are a seller and you're my client, you might ask me, do we really want to launch the week before 4th of July? And depending on the scenario, and every scenario is a little bit different, maybe if there was nothing for sale in your neighborhood, we would say, no, go on now. But most of the time, I'll probably say, no, let's launch next Tuesday, right after 4th of July weekend. And so what you get is this weird situation where the timing is different in how these groups are affected. Both are distracted, but in very different ways. So let me jump into the numbers, and I'm going to show you exactly what I was talking about and why I hate holidays for real estate stats. Okay. So if we're looking at our total active listings, right, you might think that the market has completely evened out because of what you're seeing here, which is inventory under $1 million is starting to even out, and inventory in $1 to $2 million has completely evened out and actually even dropped slightly week over week. That would be an erroneous assumption. We do not have enough data. And the reason we don't have enough data on that is that this is typically a slow week when it comes to new listings on the market. And it's only a slightly slow week when it comes in terms of buyers writing offers. So if we go next to our next little chart here, new listings in the last 14 days. Now, mind you, this is a 14-day average, and we do that to sort of smooth out the market. But even with that, this is a pretty big swing in both of our price groups. I mean, look at this. Look at where we are, sub 3,000 by a bit. New listings coming on the market. If you look at where were we at this point last year, right? At this point last year, we were at like 3,200 new listings. And in fact, we jumped up here as we rode out through July and August, and then things tapered down. This year is looking a bit different, and this is a very, very sharp drop, especially when comparing to last year. Now, if we look over here on our 1 to 2 million, well, guess what? Prices went up over the last year, so it definitely makes sense that we would have more in our 1 to 2 million. But even that number, look at how much that dropped week over week. That's not really a natural drop. A lot of this is people not putting their homes on the market this past week. And what do we expect? A good portion of those people will then decide to put their homes on the market this week. Now, if we look at the flip side, new escrows, what do we see? Well, these numbers are down too, but they're not down nearly as sharply, right? If you compare the slope on these, right? I mean, this is an obvious blip, but look here for our buyers. Yeah, it's a little bit lighter, but it's not way lighter. In fact, it's not even necessarily outside of a trend. I'm thinking we might see a slight rebound back up here. What's shocking to me is just how resilient this 1 to 2 million category has been for the number of buyers each week. Obviously, we've seen a lot of that. It's been coming out of the more affordable end of the market in terms of demand slipping them under 1 million. You know, we're down honestly by about a third where we are. Again, part of that is because prices are different. You know, our average point has moved up quite a bit. So there just aren't nearly as many under $1 million homes as there were last year. But look at the shape of this is much less. Now, if we look at our absorption rate, both of those shot up again. this is a statistic that is thrown off a little bit by this timing of this holiday and how it affects buyers and sellers separately. If we look at our closed prices, though, this is something that I want to talk about for a bit that I think is kind of interesting if you look at. So if we're to kind of go back, right, like to say March 1st, and we've got some statistics, where are we versus where we were on March 1st? Well, at the low end of the market, that entry level of the market, we're slightly up. If you look a little bit more recently, I would call this a very, very slight downward angle, maybe 1 or 2%. Same thing here, looking at our median. If we go back to 3/1, we're technically at a higher price point than we were beginning of March for those closings. And I know there was some talk about this in the comments. Someone asked, why do I always give that disclaimer that this data is 4 to 6 weeks old? If you didn't catch my reply in there, there's a very good reason why. This is based on closed data. Real estate transactions do not close instantly, right? There is the moment you negotiate, right? Which is when you negotiate a price, right? That is based on the market conditions at that exact point in time when you negotiate. Your closing, however, that is not the time period when that was negotiated. That was negotiated weeks ago, but we don't get that data until the closing happens. And the reason for that is our MLS system does not show the price of pending properties. It only shows the price once the property closes. And that's the reason why we always say this data is 4 to 6 weeks old. Now, if we go up here to our 75th percentile, there actually looks to be a little bit more of a downward slope to this. Part of that's to be expected because these are higher prices. So just as a percentage point, you're going to see more dollars down, right? It's a little hard to say if that's exactly what's happening. But what I think is kind of interesting to me is, for people that are expecting large scale price reductions, and again, this is divided by price point. This is not divided by, say, condition. This is not divided by days on market. I bet if we were to slice this data by days on market, right? The fastest selling, the medium fastest selling, and then the slow selling homes, I think that would tell a different story on price. In fact, that's a good idea. Maybe I should make that up for everybody so we can take a look at that. I bet that would show really a different story than this graph, which is just based on price points alone. I do think our market is segmented. I do think we are seeing buyers reacting differently depending on how attractive the house is, even within the same price point. If we move on here to our percent still active after 14 days in the market, that number has been steadily rising, right? That means a less competitive market, but it looks like it has settled out a little bit. We'll just have to see if that's an anomaly in our data due to the holiday weekend, or if that continues. I actually think it might continue. If we look at our close versus list ratio, again, this is measuring how much are people on average paying over list price. Does this mean that nobody is getting more than 102% of list price? No. In fact, some people will still get a bit up. Other homes will actually go below list price, right? This is an average of those properties closing, but we kind of saw it got crazy. Now it's sort of back in this sphere, more in a closer market that we've seen, kind of as 102 to 104%, again, on average. My expectation is that this is going to end up being really close to that 100% figure before long. That's sort of my guess on what's going to happen. You're going to notice that this chart, I'm going to back up a second. This close versus list, I've always thought this is a great measurement of where are buyers at versus where are sellers at, right? So buyers have a certain perception of the market, and so do sellers. So when you see prices way over list price, right, and when you see everybody overbidding, that means that the buyers have a different perspective, a much more optimistic perspective of the market than sellers do. When you see the reverse, right, when you see properties go routinely below list price, it means that is the sellers with the optimistic expectations of the market, or more optimistic than buyers do. So this is a great way to measure how in alignment is buyer and seller thinking right now. And guess what? It's getting closer into alignment, that 102% figure. What's a normal number, a quote unquote normal number? A normal number in our market is somewhere between 98.5 and 100%. So, whenever you're steadily over 100, what does that mean? It's still a pretty brisk real estate market, all things considered. Now, if we look at our days on market for new contracts, that kind of came up a little bit, then it appeared to take a pause, and now it appears to be going up some more. Do I think part of this might be holiday weekend? Yes, I think part of this might be holiday weekend as well. This might be a couple factors. One, buyers just taking a little bit longer to make a decision. And two, it might also be buyers going after older listings that have been on the market longer because there is not as much fresh inventory this week. So there's a couple things that might be going on in here for this rise. So I don't want to call this really a market movement just yet. If we look at our three-way graph, this is probably one of my favorite things to look at. Well, what happened if we're looking this week? The price basically, eased a little bit. Interest rates went down a little bit, so it resulted in a modest reduction in this payment index, the blue line here. Our rent index went down slightly, right around to $5,000 a month. So again, now we're starting to see a fairly consistent gap between these two. Inflation, we don't have those inflation numbers just yet. And then finally, we have our prevailing mortgage rates. These are based on a once a week release of Fannie and Freddie Mac. We have thought about maybe changing this a little bit, or at least trying to get a measurement for some adjustable rate mortgages as well, so people can get an idea of what's happening in that market, because this is for a 30-year fixed. And I've mentioned this a couple times before, but 50% of our clients are using adjustable mortgages right now. They are not using 30-year fixed rate mortgages. So a very, very interesting change in our marketplace. Well, what are you guys seeing out there? We love questions and comments, so absolutely keep them coming. I hope you had a great 4th of July weekend. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And as always, if you are looking to buy or sell real estate in Southern California, we would absolutely love to lend you our expertise and insight, and we can help you out with that. Definitely reach out to us. There's a link for a 15-minute, no cost, no obligation consultation via Zoom. If you'd like to do it that way, that link is down in the description, so you can click on that. I think that's pretty much it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We'll see you again real soon.